Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, the Flying V edition, where we talk to incredible people who are creating impact and ripples on the pond. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that is what makes them awesome. Today, my guest is Rob Clark. Now, Rob is a CEO, owner, founder, entrepreneur, and a work in progress, and the incredible leader of RC Design, a full-service digital marketing company in NewMarket, Ontario. I loved having this conversation with Rob, and we got to see how he has weaved kindness and caring and seeing things through to the end and doing an absolutely amazing job as a lesson from his parents and how he provides the same for his clients. Rob is making an impact and gets to better the pond for his people, his community, and his clients. Thank you, Rob Clark. Mr. Rob Clark, you are the CEO, founder, entrepreneur, and an ongoing work in progress of your company, RC Design, right out of NewMarket, Ontario. Mr. Clark, I am absolutely ecstatic to have you as a guest on the Better the Pond podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
We met, almost a month ago, I guess, or a few weeks back. And we have to give a little shout out to our good friend, Lindsay McMurray.
Sure.
You're Tech Canada chair and great human being. And so within our tech meeting, you were the winner of the James Pond Award. And thus we get to tell your story in the podcast. So this is going to be a great time together.
Great.
All right. So before we get going on about you, Rob, can you tell me or tell my listeners about RC Design? Who are you and what do you do?
We are a full service design and marketing agency. So, we multidisciplinary projects from, digital marketing, integrated marketing campaigns, website builds, brand visual identity builds, logos, etc. So the whole gamut. And we don't have a specific niche that we're in. Really love the diversity of the different sectors that we support, from not-for-profit through to manufacturing, through to retail, and kind of everything in between.
What makes you different?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I think through our last talk, you were talking a bit about that, and Mike and I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And Mike is kind of 2IC for me at RC Design. He runs our operations, and we went to a speaker recently. It was you heard of the brand Cheekbone? It's not Cheekbone Beauty. It's an Indigenous woman, Jen Harper, who started it. Pretty amazing story. And it was we were trying to figure out what makes us unique, what makes us unique over our competitors or just in the marketplace. And I think it's care. I think it's really it starts from the founder, from myself, really caring about what it is we're doing. It's never kill it and build it attitude, which in a lot of ways gets us in a lot of trouble where we spend too much time on things and a lot of projects aren't profitable. But it's really, truly important. So kind of having a healthy balance of really understanding what are those guidelines that we need to stay within. So, making sure that we're not doing something that is $100 value and delivering, or $100,000 in scope and delivering $10,000 in value, right? So just making sure that we keep our and I'm probably a big an influence on spending too much time in certain things. So
but it's interesting you say about caring, right? So if you look at, whether we're building, we're designing a logo, we're creating copy, we're doing a website, and digital influence. It's interesting when you say caring, that you bring in the emotion into the product that you're doing rather than the statistics of what it does. And I think those are two very different things.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, we even at the end of a project, or even before an internal presentation, one of the things we ask ourselves is, do we love it? Do you love it? Are you proud of it? And does it hit the goals that we had assigned for it? And it doesn't go past that unless we're adamant about how we feel, how we answer that question. So
right. Fantastic. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Someone didn't know about you.
Sometimes it gets missed, right? I mean, obviously, 95% of the time, and sometimes we get, you know, overburdened with projects and stress, and some things slip through the cracks. But I think,
Welcome to life.
yeah, welcome to life. Yeah, sure.
All right. So let's find a little bit about you, Rob. Is what got you from being a gosling? And I'm saying, where were you hatched? Where did you start life? To leaving the nest. Now that's one of two things. Either, you left the nest on your own, decided to fly, or you were maybe, possibly gently nudged, or shoved, depending how that worked out, to where you are today. Rob Clark, what is your backstory?
So specifically from a professional perspective, like becoming an entrepreneur,
I want your backstory. So first of all, where'd you start life?
Newmarket, Ontario.
Wow, you've really moved around a lot.
I have a bit. I've actually got I've attended the most post-secondary schools with the least amount of diplomas degrees of any other Canadian resident, probably. But
I want to hear the story.
well, I went out. I lived out west, and I was out east at Carleton. I actually went to UNB for a little bit. Not UNB, sorry, UPEI for a very short period of time, 2 weeks. And then I ended up settling at York and Seneca. So my life is a bit of a paradox as far as interest goes. I love football, so I played football. I wanted to play university football, but I also love fine arts. So I took, a fine art all the way through. And typical, traditional classroom learning has always been a real struggle for me, sitting in a classroom. And then going to university wasn't ideal because you didn't have to attend. So I could, work in a bar and not go to class and just show up for exams and those kinds of things. It just didn't work out very well for me. So anyway, I did I call the 1-year Bachelor's of Arts program at Carleton University, just kind of a bit of a dean's vacation after that. And then I decided to find something that I was interested in, which was, how do I apply my passion for being creative into an occupation? And I was never a strong enough illustrator or fine artist that I could ever make any money at it. So I decided to go into communication and design and graphic design, and they had a concurrent program run through York and Seneca where you can do a Bachelor of Fine Arts and a design diploma at a Seneca college. So once I completed the design diploma, I went into an internship at a place in Toronto, I think, which I believe evolved into a full-time job. And I think I was making about $19,000 a year, and I was driving to and from Newmarket. I don't know, parking tickets, towing tickets, and I started doing business for myself. So I've always kind of worked for myself. And I think the reason and the inspiration wasn't to grow and develop business. It was more of sort of that freedom fighter. I just didn't like to have to report to someone. I wanted to be in control of my own destiny. And so, I started my own business in my parents' basement. Both my parents, neither one of them entrepreneurs, but both civil servants. My mom being a nurse for many years, and went into real estate, and my dad was an educator and then moved into administration and the board. And so they were a bit fearful of the step. I said, well, give me 6 months. If it doesn't work out in 6 months, I'll go back and I'll get a job. And in 6 months, I kind of bought my own house. And back when you buy a house, I think I paid $155,000 for my first house. It's been slow, conserved growth, lots of mistakes along the way. I really wasn't, for the first 10 or 12 years, I really wasn't growing a business. I was just giving myself a bit of a lifestyle and good healthy work-life balance, and then it changed. So that's kind of the journey a bit. Yeah.
So I'm going to take you back. So you started, we know that you were born at a very young age, and you were in Newmarket. So tell me, I'm intrigued. Tell me a bit about sort of elementary school, high school, those formative years.
I was probably the kid that always, had his hand up to try and answer everything. And irritating probably for teachers a lot of times. And the time they got to me to answer, I probably forgot what the question was. But always been social. I always had a lot of friends, and a lot of diversity in friendships too. So kids from all different types of interests and skills, and So I never really got caught up with, as I said, like, being into fine art and also enjoying the sport of football. Very different people.
Mhm.
And especially back then, I think it's a bit like nowadays, it's a bit more acceptable to kind of take, multiple paths and interests. But back then it was, you've got your buckets of people that are in sports and jocks. And so I'm kind of digressing here, but to answer your question, high school, I think growing up in the 70s, and especially in sports, and a dad who I love dearly, but a lot of that male toxic
Mm.
upbringing,
Mhm.
tough, be strong, don't be. So lots of, I've lots of regrets through some of the things I did and getting a little bit of trouble and fights and those kinds of things.
Of course you did.
And yeah, and then, through high school, I scraped by. I did the very least that I had to do, a bare minimum to get into university so that I
Mhm.
could continue, with football. And then I applied the same sort of thinking into university, which didn't work out well. But when I moved from that into post-secondary, where I found a program I liked, ended up becoming, part of the dean's list and excelling in it because I really liked the things I was doing. So for me, that structured learning, it's really hard, like to sit and, I mean, even in tech sometimes, and depending on the speaker, not yourself, obviously, but when it's someone speaking to you for, for 3 hours straight, I have a hard time staying,
Yep.
keeping in active lending. So yeah, being an entrepreneur and having my own business and controlling my own destiny kind of checked a lot of boxes for me. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answered your question.
No, it did. No, what was your first job?
My first job, I was going into grade 9, and I worked at a golf course called Westview Golf Course, just in kind of Aurora Ballantrae area here.
Mhm.
And I used to ride and it's probably about, I don't know, maybe about 8-10 kilometers from where I live. My parents still live in their house. And I was thinking about it a little while ago, actually, I'd ride my bike there and then I'd ride it back. And it was on Leslie Street, no lights, no shoulders, 13 years old, coming back at 10 o'clock at night on weekends in your bike. And but I did a bit of everything. So I'd clean the washrooms, and then I'd be flipping your burgers, probably not washing my hands in between as a kid. And think that stuff is kind of think about that when you're at a golf course next time eating a burger. But yeah, it was I think I made $2 or $3 an hour. It was cash, got a little manila envelope at the end of the week.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was it. That was my first job.
How long did that last for?
Probably a couple summers. Yeah.
Couple summers. Okay.
Yeah. And
So
then yeah, and then I ended up working for a landscape company for a summer. Roofing company, did some manual labor and stuff. I felt like it was some nice cross training I was very focused on being big and strong when I was at a young age, because I was a bit of a beanpole for a
mhm.
while. So just, it doesn't bode well for my interest that I had at the time. So yeah.
It's interesting you say that just listening to you. So if you look back, as when you're a kid, so you're in, you're cleaning bathrooms, you're flipping burgers, you're doing roofing, right? You're doing all these random jobs. Then you go into football and fine arts. So, I mean, there's absolutely no link between all those things. They're very different things, but all those things have actually contributed back to who you are, where you can
Mm.
put all those pieces together, right? And then give a perspective that no one else can give. Just
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of how my
interesting.
brain works too. It's just kind of just randomly, you know, buzzing through the day.
There you go. So, um, two questions. We'll move on. So your mom, your dad, you said your dad was an educator. So you said yes, all the toxic messages that you were not alone. You were not the only one given those kind of messaging growing up. What was the number one lesson that you think that your dad taught you, or that you learned from him?
Uh, See things through. So if you start something and you say you're going to do something for someone, you better damn do it.
Or else.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
do it right. So I have memories. My dad will deny this, and hopefully he never listens to this. But even cutting the grass, and I'd be in a rush to go somewhere to a friend's house or to a party or something, and I cut the grass, I miss a piece, and I could have just cut that one piece, but he make me walk the whole lawn again and walk and kind of walk behind me to make sure that I got it cut right. So
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
Which as an adult, which was painful as a kid, but as an adult, the admiration I have for him that because it's so hard when your kids are disappointed or wanting to do something and still hold them to task is, I mean, I fail as a dad as that. So in seeing him be able to say, I don't give a shit that, can I swear in this? Is that
Oh yeah, of course you can.
I don't really give a shit if you have fun, right? Like this is what you're gonna do and you're gonna see it through. And he always held me to task and just made sure that I saw things through. So in life, if I say, it's one of the strengths and weaknesses, you say you're gonna help with something and it just isn't good timing, but you do it anyway. And sometimes you have resent kind of going through it, but you follow through on things. So yeah, accountability, I think is a from a values perspective was, I don't think my dad ever said he's going to do something and never fall through on it.
Right. Cool. What about your mom? What's one message? What's one lesson that you learned from her?
Kindness. Yeah. Just,
Kindness.
I'll give you an example. My mom being a nurse, I have a few quick memories that come into play. I think I was in the hospital. Maybe I had my appendix out or something, and I was in the hospital, and there was a man who was on his own, and he was vomiting. It's graphic here, but and I remember not knowing who he is, just going over, holding a bucket, holding his hair, rubbing his back, wherever it was, complete stranger, like those kinds of things happen all the time. My mom just modeled amazing kind behavior to strangers, and that's really stuck with me. So
Very cool. Thank you for that.
yeah, no problem.
So, just one last question, sort of is in my head. So why, you got in, like, you can see, I can see your backstory and all the random different things that you did and whatnot. You can start your own business. I mean, you were looking for autonomy. Obviously, that's what entrepreneurs do. I mean, you're buying freedom. That's what you're
Yeah.
doing. But why RC design? Like, how did RC design come about? I'm curious.
So like the name itself,
Or just the company.
um, well, when I was in school, my dad had some work that I could have done for the board as a freelancer. But I needed at that time a GST number in order to invoice for it. So I went off to the provincial court offices after a night of debauchery, not feeling great. My mom came with me up to the courthouses and I was feeling very rough. Funny enough, there was someone sitting beside me registering a business that was at the same venue that I was at that was kind of that I probably didn't want to see. And I remember sitting there just cold sweats, wanting to rush through this and get it over with. And every name that I had was taken. So my mom's recommendation was, well, why don't you call it RC Design, Rob Clark Design, which um I I wanted to name it something that was separate from my name, and that's how it came to be. So I went up to the provincial courthouse at the time, registered the name, and then I was able to start billing and doing some work for the board while I was in school still.
And then the rest is history.
Yeah, there's been kind of, I mean, I was in school still at the time, so I just kind of poked away doing some freelance work, and then it just, I've been a social person, like what, and one of the beauties of having so many diverse interests, you meet a real diverse group of people too. So, and creating connections and, and being a relatively, you know, amicable guy and get along with everyone. People and I think also from my dad saying, seeing things through, I think people were not afraid to refer. So I had quite a big referral source once I started my business and still do. So I'm grateful for.
Yeah, I just consistently building relationships.
Yeah.
Right, like consistently. So
Yeah.
it's quite fascinating. Cool. All right. So what's the number one thing, positive or negative, that's happened in your life that's ruffled your feathers? And how
So
did you respond to it?
personally or professionally?
Pick one.
Doesn't matter. Oh,
It's up to you.
okay. Well, a lesson in resilience was, I remember I had moved out of my home that I bought. I started renting an office here on Davis Drive in Newmarket. I had one employee, and I got an opportunity to do, it wasn't really a core service offering, but it was printing, and I was doing printing for Toronto Hydro Energy Services, doing the utility, the bill invoicing. So we redesigned the invoice for Toronto Hydro Energy Services, which was really cool. But then we actually brokered the print, and I worked with a printer that I had not worked before that could do a big run of 2 million or whatever it was at the time. And back then we used an application called Quark Express Read Later, and I actually physically did the design and everything. And on it, there was a perforation, die mark, die line. but somehow it shifted on front page and back page. And as opposed to them saying, where do you want the perf? They just guessed the wrong place. So I had, skids of this stuff, $30,000-$40,000 in print. And, back then that was, we're going back 20 years ago, probably, I ended up leaving the office, exiting that lease, eliminating an employee or employee and a half, and coming back and working in my house. And, it was a pivotal point where I was like, well, do I just go and get a job and kind of close the doors, or do I continue to kind of forge through? And so I figured it out, and the printer came out with some terms for payback, which was okay. But that for me was really heavy early in my career. I'm like, I can't do this. This is just feels like far too much risk. So,
But what was the takeaway? What was the lesson that you learned through that experience?
A couple. One is quality assurance.
Fair.
So what you need, not only your own quality assurance, but before things, if you're relying upon an external contractor vendor, what do you need to see back to ensure that it's actually the outcome is going to be the one that you want? So proofs and I'm not, I mean, as you know, through Colby being a quick start, probably QA isn't a skill set of mine. I think I can glance and find things really quickly, but going through detailed documents is it's like fingernails on a chalkboard for me. It's just very tough. So putting the systems in place for that. Also really sticking to your core service offerings, right? Like printing a project for a client is one thing, taking on, a massive print job that really shouldn't be brokered. It should be dealt direct with a printer. So here's a big project, let's partner on it so that there's an accountability between both the printing vendor and the agency, which would be myself. So
I think that's a huge lesson right there, right? Of, knowing what your capabilities are when you start, and a lot of times, I mean, you and I, sometimes we'll say yes before the question was even finished being asked, right?
I've done it twice already this morning since before this. So
there you go. So that's what we do. But here's the deal though, is right. We succeed by failing. We succeed by failing because we try, fail, win, try, fail, try, win. Everything's an experiment. That's the fun. That's the right. So it was never a failure, as we tried. And then you find out from there what didn't work, which leverages you forward.
Yeah.
So it's success by failure.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. I see that. I think the one area where I probably struggle with that is people, right? How you approach people, because if you're looking at something you're actually doing and it doesn't work, that piece of wood cut the wrong way isn't disappointed in you, or you're not disappointed. Like you can manage your emotions around it, but when it's people and how you deal with people, that I find that a lot more challenging to kind of to fail and then figure out how to approach it differently, because your innate reaction or that unconscious reaction, it's really hard to change, right? To when it comes to people. Does that make sense? I don't know if they make sense.
Well, but it is a great preamble to the next question, because the next question is going to be about people. So, as you know, when we were in the session in NewMarket, in your office actually, which is very beautiful, by the way, and very, very nice. So it's actually kind of like my dream office, to be honest with you. But geese fly was 71% further and faster when flying in the V formation. So you learned that when you were there. What do you think the secret is to getting a team flying in that V formation? So this kind of really ties into what he's about people.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this, Rob?
Still working on it.
Okay.
And
work in progress.
Clarity and goals, alignment and goals, and I see more and more of, you feel like people may let you down, or they repeat the same behaviors, and you know what the impact is, but if they don't have an understanding of where you're going and making it relevant to them, it's really hard to get people to shift and change. So I think, and we're going to be resetting. So we're looking at doing, EOS currently, so that we can create that clear vision and clear accountability through the organization. I think we've done a relatively good job with it. We have a team of people that really truly care about each other, about the work they're doing. But sometimes I think there's a misalignment in the vision and where we're going. And I mean, ultimately that falls on me. So putting some things in place to kind of help that, right from onboarding through to, checking in with a tenured employee that makes sure that they're still on track. Cause it's not just, set it and forget it. Right.
Oh, absolutely. It's never set it and forget it.
Yeah.
Um, what about, you talk about alignment. I mean, clarity and goals is what I heard from you. Um, what do you think's in behind that? When even looking like, talking about, the V formation and that alignment, what do you think is in behind that, Rob, in order to get that, to really get that machine humming, to get things really moving?
Um, well, I think it's, you know, saying something that gets said a lot was having the right people and the right seats on the bus, right? So you can
Hmm.
have people who are actually, you had showed something recently that I've used probably about 5 times since, which was that circle diagram where you had innate in the middle,
Oh,
excellent, competent, and really looking at that to understand, what really energizes people. And I think the comment in around, if you're doing something that you really love to do, you don't need external acknowledgement
hmm.
versus doing something well in order to stay motivated and getting that external acknowledgement. You're not really seeing that you're not doing something that is not it's a bit of an energy suck for you. So really being cognizant of that as an organization, as your leadership team, and even in your own day to day, right? To make sure,
Hmm.
because I know that I don't necessarily was it do as I do, not do as I say, not as I do, right? And I
Right.
do probably far too much of that.
Yeah.
I do too much work of things that I really shouldn't be doing, and
Hmm.
try to shift and change that for people as well. So I don't know.
So just on that note, that's an interesting thing that you say, because, and as I'm just using this to sort of, my listeners as well, is, when you're doing the things that either aren't natural to you, when things aren't natural, you don't like them. So that's the subset of it. But you realize when you're actually doing those things of how much energy expenditure there is and how much joy you get out of it. Like it's the energy vampire.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And then on top of that, I put that piece of, accountability and integrity and seeing things through. And you end up doing a lot of things that you don't like to do, but you feel like you said you're going to do, and you have to see them through. And then you have a lot of negative talk about yourself while you're working through it. So,
Yeah.
I think I didn't recognize that probably until the last couple of years that, most of the things that I do are things that are a huge energy suck, and it's impacted, you know, my own personal mental health and how I see myself. So it's been a big pivot and working through to make sure that I have the right team working the right things, including myself, because it is I think you'd see a lot of retention and attrition of employees that happens as a result of people not doing the things that make them happy. And um,
Yeah, if you experience that for yourself, and we set other people up as leadership and put them in a role, we either promote them into it, or we think that they're going to be good at because they've done it before, whatever the case is. But in behind the scenes, if you think of the dialogue that you've had with yourself, they're probably having the same dialogue.
yeah, 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 for sure. And I know for me personally, and probably everyone else who owns their own business, is that when you're in a position where you feel like you can't get out, it's really a terrible, terrible position, right?
Mhm.
Because you can't leave. You're doing things you don't enjoy, but you just can't abandon ship. Where if you are an employee, that decision can be fairly whimsical and be like, I'm out. I can start looking, I'll figure it out. We don't get that luxury as employers. So you have to fight through it, and you have to make sure that you can find, you got into it to be that freedom fighter and have that flexibility. But really, it's just optics, right? Optically, you have flexibility, and optically, you have freedom. In reality, you have a lot less of both of those. So got to get in that place where it's as Lindsay likes to call, get you in a position of choice. So
Yeah, absolutely. But if you
where I
look
work.
back at what you just said too, is like, imagine as you being in school, right? When you couldn't, sitting still for an hour and staying focused on one thing, and right, having to do the things you couldn't really do it your way, yet you didn't have a choice.
Mhm.
You're in school. You didn't have the luxury of getting out. And it's kind of the same thing now. As you just triggered a thought in my mind about, when you're a business owner, right?
Yeah,
You still do, but you do it still have a choice. You can bail on it, but it's your baby. So you're caught, right? So then how do you get in a position of choice, and how do you get in a position of freedom?
yeah, yeah. Definitely.
All right. So next question for you, Rob, is this is what I really want to hear about, is what are you doing to better the pond? What ripples are you creating out there? Because I know You guys, I mean, you guys are ambassadors for change and growth. We know that to be true, right? You're really, children and youth are really important to you. And work with Easter Seals and the York Region Children's Aid Society, and in from the cold. There's a whole different things I saw that you guys were doing to better the pond. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts. What's
Sure.
RC Design doing to make the world a better place?
Yeah, I think probably our website for one needs some content updates because it's not current at all. So, um, this is how I look at it. So, before 2008, our business, and some of this comes from my mom as well. I think it's important just to give back. End of story.
Hmm.
But in 2008, the economy took a turn, and a lot of our clients were in the financial services industry. So, overnight, it was kind of like COVID, like 80% of our revenue just stopped. So, had to be nimble and work incredibly locally, and to see how quickly, we're able to, not lose an employee, obviously had some stress with, capital, et cetera, but we're able to kind of battle through it, but staying really hyper locally for that, join some different boards, and seeing how amazing the community was to support our business. So I think for me, that was okay. So, our communities helped me grow my business, have trust in the things that we do for them, allow us to, have a certain lifestyle. So I think it's really important that, that we give back where and whenever we can. So, whether that's, sponsoring a golf tournament, doing some, um, some more passive donations where you're just kind of cutting checks for things, or doing some pro bono work for a local charity. So, it's funny you mentioned that, because when I was at this little conference that our chamber put on, it was really quite powerful. Mike and I started thinking about everything we do is very, there's not a real plan around our giving, right? It's like, I'm, I know a lot of people in our community, have a hard time walking up Main Street. Well, and it sounds like a blessing, but it's actually sometimes having some autonomy is really hard. But how do we create giving in a way that is more organized and focused and actually has bigger impact? So, can't remember what it was that spawned it. The idea was that we came up with is looking at doing a contest and looking for small grassroots not-for-profits who could really use help with the communications, a marketing strategy, a website, those kinds of, to help drive the messaging in the community, and to engage their stakeholders. So doing a contest where people can submit their stories, and then having like a, external selection committee to help decide which one, and then we actually take that on as a project pro bono and build that, as opposed to, all these one-offs that we do throughout the year. I mean, which I think will be tough, because we when you're well known in the community as an organization that gives, you typically get asked a lot more too. It's like
Yes.
this list, right, that people that you're on. So I'd have to say no a lot, which would be hard to do.
Hmm.
But I get to your point. What are we doing to better the pond? I think trying to really hard to create a culture where, people feel psychologically safe. There's getting a group of people that really feel like they can bring anything forward, have any kind of conversation. It's not perfect. And then also making sure that we're aware of not just the business that we're growing, but the communities that support our business along that journey, and supporting them as well.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, just by when I was there and in your office, we talked a little bit of sort of that, Main Street on Newmarket, and just some of the things that you were, some of the ideas and things that you were looking at doing, in the area of business, of just really making that area better for business, which draws more people in and becomes a win-win. So,
Can you help me a little bit here? What?
So what I number one, putting your business, number one on Main Street down in Newmarket, right? So now you're contributing to the community, and then again, just some of the ideas, the building across the street, and the
Gotcha.
right, just making that community better through all the ideas that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. We're really lucky because our downtown core here on Main Street, our economic development plan is that it is the living room of Main Street. So there's lots of great incentives. I'm digressing here, not answering your question. I recognize that, but not that I haven't had a lot of influence on what's happened on Main Street, but certainly is a big part of decision making being down here. I think that there's just it has a real strong sense of community. We've got a really strong BIA, and I think there's a lot of diversity in the different types of retailers and stuff. So I think while we were in office, because we're all remote now, so it doesn't have a whole lot of bearing, is it was great. Like, we're able to participate in local events and, accessing different merchants and stuff. So, giving back in the sense you're actually supporting other retailers that are, whether it's a restaurant, but unfortunately, through COVID, and you mentioned that you liked our office, we actually just about to sign a lease agreement that I'm gonna rent the entire space out because we don't use it enough. So it's hard to bring that back, like how to bring. I mean, again, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but I struggle with a remote team and leading a remote team because you can't keep your finger on the pulse of people's happiness, because I'm not in meetings with 98% of our team. I don't know how they're feeling. I can't see their faces. I don't know what they're working on. And if you don't have the systems and processes to keep yourself informed of how things are going, you kind of feel like you're leading in the dark. And it's probably adds to some of my mindset when it comes to business and stress. And it feels like dysfunction, and the reality is it's probably not. I just don't have the right information. But
Yeah, I think that in itself is a big issue, and I think a lot of business leaders still don't have all the answers. There's this whole remote work. I mean, we look pre-COVID, everyone's in the office. COVID hits when we never thought we could actually run a hybrid or a virtual workforce, but it proved that you can. And yet, for some organizations, they've made it work reasonably well, or some even quite well, and then some really struggle.
yeah.
And I don't know if there's a magic bullet. I for one haven't figured that one out yet.
Yeah, hard to pull back. I mean, I love the fact that we're able to give ultimate flexibility for a team and in their workday. For me, I don't think that we have the perfect systems and processes in place so that I have the visibility I'd like to have, and
Yeah.
to make people are and I think we've had more turnover in the last staff turnover in the last 3 years than we had than we've ever had. So I think I don't have the data to support it, but I feel like a lot of it is a bit of isolation, not getting acknowledgement that perhaps you need because you're working, you're doing a good job, therefore you're not having conversations with people that are actually delivering. So being more and then being stuck in the things that you do and you don't enjoy doing, having those connections with team members and just reaching out and, hey, what are you working on? Oh, that's awesome. I love it. Like being able to do that, I think it helps with, people, because, and then that comes back to what you're saying earlier is, here's my Colby coming in. The innate excellent, right? So if you are in the circle of delivering excellence, but not in that innate state, and you're not getting acknowledgement, you're not feeling fulfilled, and you're bouncing, right? So I think there's a bit of that's happened over the last little while too. And people have, like, our industry's young, right? The knowledge is young. It's a moving target, especially in digital marketing and and website development and looking at the influence of AI. And you really have to keep your finger on the pulse. But that means we have a fairly younger demographic, and trying to buy a house in Southern Ontario is really tough, right? So we've had staff move to, Belleville, North Bay, Thunder Bay, so that, you can have bricks and mortar and grow and develop a family. And then pulling that back is, and it's into a centralized location is pretty tough.
And you're not buying $150,000 house anymore.
You are not buying, not buying $150,000. I think my parents was 27,000 when they bought theirs in 71, I think so.
I paid $32,500 for my first house.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Where?
In Regina.
Wow. And now they're in Regina. What is it now? 80,000 for a house?
So interesting. That house I paid $32,500. I can't remember what year it was, 88 or whatever it was. And that house now probably about, I bet you be 280. Should have kept it.
Houses are still a lot more affordable in
Yeah,
you know.
we're more affordable here than out in Ontario or Kelowna. I was just up in Kelowna and Vancouver, so it's a whole different world. But
That house that I bought for $156,000 is probably 1.2 million today.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's the other thing with having your own business too is, you have kids, is just making sure that you're able to, get yourself in a financial position that you can give your kids a bit of a jump start, because otherwise it really is tough.
Yeah, no, I get it. All right, next question here, Rob, is what's one lesson that you've learned along your path that you would share with an entrepreneur starting a business today?
Um, so when I started out, and probably similar to a lot of people, is when you're young, I want to do it on my own. I don't want help. So learning through your own experiences is really painful and really expensive, and prevents, you know, um, growth, profit, happiness. The best decision I ever made was having a coach, joining tech, those kinds of things, because you've got access to 10, 15, 20 different entrepreneurs who have had, you know, these experiences, or come across these roadblocks, and you can learn from their mistakes. And sometimes that's, the impact can be a year, right? Like,
Mhm.
or when it comes to people, or when it comes to systems, processes. So I would say, look for mentorship, look for coaching, look to join an association that isn't networking. It really is truly about support. um the other thing too is, when you have your own business, it's like, both my parents and my sister have worked for other people, and while be it very successful in their own kind of industries and spaces, didn't understand the specific pains and challenges of. So you felt like people just didn't get you, and
Mhm.
that was really, really hard. And I felt like it was like, well, my dad was like, well, tell that guy to fuck off, like, I just
Mhm.
fire him. Like, it's not that easy, right? It's just,
Yep.
you just make these decisions with it, knowing what the impact is to you and your own business. So that was incredibly valuable, to be able to, like, oh my God, I'm normal.
Yeah,
Like, I'm not broken,
I'm
like
not broken.
everyone else here has had like similar challenges and frustrations.
Yeah.
This is amazing. So it probably, to be honest, had I not joined tech, and I'm not just trying to blow sunshine here, but I probably wouldn't be still running and managing my business.
Mm. Yeah, it's incredibly. I mean, as a tech member myself too, the value you get, and having other people's perspectives, and they see what you can't see, or they can, they've had an experience you can learn from, that you can just shorten up time.
Yeah.
And then having a coach. I mean, I said I'll give a shout out back to Lindsay McMurray, one of the best tech Canada chairs in the country, and just that person that that either can hold you accountable or get you thinking differently. Are you asking the right questions? And just and really help you grow and develop.
Yeah. Or just give you the space to bitch and vent, because
Yeah,
sometimes we need that too, right? When you're,
absolutely. Everything is energy. Got to move the energy, right?
yeah, how to move the energy. Yeah.
Got to move the energy. One last question for you here, Rob, and we'll
Shoot.
wrap up. But here's one you don't have. Uh, if you were standing on a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you,
Oh boy.
what would you say?
Uh, I think just be kind. I think the world is just in such a place. I think, good inspires good, and that's I really believe that. So I think the more that we can support and help other people and be kind, the world's just a better place. That's professionally, personally, across the board. I think where everyone's in such a rush, and the world is just lacking patience and kindness lately.
Hmm.
That's more than one word.
That's okay. And I said, I didn't say one word. I said, what would you say?
What would I say?
So,
Okay.
all right. So, yeah. So basically, better the pond.
Yeah, better than
We're
Paul.
this. You and I are on the same page here.
Yeah.
So, I just want to wrap up something here, Rob, that I find really fascinating. Just by listening to you is, if you think about just, if if the world was listened to, what would you say? And I, well, be kind. And it's a really interesting thing that, that's the lesson that you learned from your mom, right?
Mhm.
Be kind and be generous and be there and love and care, which is kind of what RC design is about. And then finish what you start and do it well is the lesson. So if you kind of look back, what I heard from you is what we do at RC Design is like, we do what we say we're going to do. We're going to do a great job of what we do for our client to get an end, an impact and a result. And whether you're bettering the pond or whatever it is, we're going to do it really, really well. But we do it with kindness. And those two kind of lessons that you learned from mom and dad kind of really seem to kind of mesh nicely into where you are today.
I like it. Yeah. Well, we're in the middle of kind of rethinking our mission, values, positioning statement and stuff, and I think that that will definitely come into play.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks. We had a great time here with Rob Clark from RC Design. Now, if anyone wants to find you, have a conversation with you, maybe even if they're in Newmarket, have a coffee with you, right? Where do people go to find you, Rob?
Happy to share my email address. Is probably the easiest way to connect with me.
Okay.
So, rclark@rcdesign.com. That's RCLARK@rcdesign.com.
And we'll get that in the show notes as well. You a social media guy at all?
Well, we do that as a business. On a personal level, I don't really use social media. Yeah.
Okay.
Conscious choice, but
Then email address it is. That's how they find
you.
you.
I mean, if someone, I have a Facebook account, not on my phone, but yeah. Anyway, it's email's probably the best for me.
Okay, fair enough.
LinkedIn is
all right. All right. There you have it. Had a great time with Rob Clark, RC Design. The guy is a constant work in progress, but just getting better and better and better and better. And I want to thank you everything that you do to better the pond, Rob. You are making a big impact, and your caring and nurturing nature really does come through.
Well, I appreciate the time. It was valuable for people listening.
Cool. Well, of course it was. It was Rob Clark.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Warren Barron. I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond because we're better together. Thank you so much, Rob.
See you. Thanks so much. See you, Warren.